All right, we're going to get started in just a bit. Welcome everyone to the July meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. This is the first PEDC meeting since the pandemic, so it's nice to see everybody's faces. We got a pretty big agenda tonight. I'll just first start off with introductions. This is George McGonigal, who represents the First Ward, Laura Lewis, who represents the Fifth Ward, Cynthia Brock, who represents the First Ward. I'm Seth Murtaugh, I chair the committee, represent the Second Ward. This is Joanne Cornish, our planning director, Steve Smith, who represents the Fourth Ward, and Donna Fleming, who represents the Third Ward. So are there any changes to the agenda? I did have one that came in as a request to move the couplet discussion up to the front of the agenda. So we'll do that. We can do that maybe after announcements, updates, and reports. That sound okay? This was just to facilitate, I guess, the DOT folks. Is that right? Okay. Any other changes? No? Okay. So next up is public comment, and I've got 2 cards for public comment. And we do have a couple of public hearings tonight, so if you're here to speak on the public hearing topic, if you'll wait to the public hearing. But this is our general public comment that we hold at all our meetings. And the first card I have is Faygo Gakis. And I have a card for Teresa Alt, but it's on the Inlet Island, so we'll wait for that public hearing.
Before you time it, just for the record, I have been vaccinated. I just want to wear a mask due to what's happening in the world, just for precautions when I'm around a lot of people. Just so you feel comfortable, I've been vaccinated. Do I have to press this button?
Make sure it's just green. So if you press it and it's green, or if it's, yeah,
It's- Is it on?
You're
now?
on, yeah, it's green.
My name is Faygo Gakis. I live in the city of Ithaca, on the Common specifically. I'm going to say something that I said 2 weeks ago because it's still a concern. When I addressed the whole council, I talked about how people are able to speak before council. Governor Cuomo has opened things back to normal, to the way they were pre-COVID, which means that I expected to come here, sign the card, and to speak. But I'm still told that the way it is with the county and with the city, that people could sign in online. And I've been dealing with this issue for 2 weeks. I've called City Hall several times. Julie Holcomb emailed council last week after waiting to see for a meeting that happened in City Hall that went nowhere. So then we talked again, and she emailed. Only 2 people responded, George McGonigal and Seth. I believe you said it doesn't matter what happens, which is pretty outrageous. And you said something similar, or you I don't know. But the thing is, nobody cared about the process. So, Seth, I called you because I called Julie, and I got those responses. I left you a message, and you called me telling me you don't understand what I was telling you. I mean, I'm not dumb, okay? I'm not a child, okay? We're adults here. This is not a game. This is democracy you're talking about. I'm 58 years old. I know people are into high tech, but high tech isn't the solution to everything. Okay, I know people are barking at that, at what I'm saying. But, you know, it's very unfair what the city is doing, okay? And that's why 2 weeks ago, I said what I said with the process of where the city is going. Okay, I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to be mean. I never operate that way. Okay, I have very, very high ethics. Okay, but to tell me you don't understand when Julie emails you, okay, and you tell me, well, you're going to be busy, and I respected that. I didn't call you back, okay, and now we're here because you came in a couple minutes ago, so I didn't want to bother you or go up to you. But honestly, this is what I get all the time. Either people, this is not the way you run the city. Cynthia Brock, you told me a number of years ago, I don't need to return your call. I mean, the same thing with Deborah, who I said 2 weeks ago. She tells me, oh, I didn't get your message. Oh, and then she says, oh, she said that again. And then she says to me, I don't have to call you.
Faye, thanks. That's
Yeah,
the 3
I mean,
minutes.
you see, this is the thing. I had a whole bunch of things to talk about, and this issue now has taken up my 3 minutes. And I resent that, because I shouldn't have to be fighting like this for my privilege to speak, which apparently the city doesn't care.
Thanks, Faye. We do have a public hearing. I'll just say quickly, just to address Faye's concerns. I did call you today. Honestly, I think I was distracted. I had a busy day at work. But just hold on. I apologize for that. But what I will say is that, what you described, people signing up in advance or signing up at the meeting, I think either would be fine. I think we could do both. And honestly, I think there's going to be a little bit of a process emerging from the pandemic and just trying to get used to this. Faye, I'm sorry. This is we can't get into a back and forth. I'm sorry.
This is what gives me the reputation that I get.
Faye, we can't get into a back and forth.
You are so dishonest. You knew exactly what I was saying.
Faye, we can't get into a back and forth. Faye,
what did you just say? We could do both. What do you mean by that? I have to wait for 10 people to be ahead of me when I come to a meeting?
I'm going to follow up with Julie, and we're going to figure out a fair process that works for the public.
The fair process is to let people that are present go first.
Faye.
That is the fair process.
Faye, that is 3 minutes. You've had your 3 minutes. There are other people waiting to speak.
Well, you're leaving, so it doesn't matter how you treat people.
Next up is a public hearing on Inlet Island. This is the Inlet Island preferred developer. Is there a motion on the public hearing? Moved by Laura, seconded by Steve. All in favor of opening the public hearing on the Inlet Island preferred developer? That carries unanimously. I have one card for that. It's Teresa Alt.
I am Teresa Alt of 206 Eddy Street, City of Ithaca. I am speaking on behalf of myself and Teresa Halpert, who lives at 209 South Geneva Street, but is visiting family out of town. There were 3 applicants to develop on a city-owned parking lot on Inlet Island. From among them, the Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency, the IURA, selected the proposal by Finger Lakes Development, Steve Flash and Jeffrey Rimland, featuring a hometel, a sort of hotel for extended stays, and only 50 to 60 units of workforce housing. We are disappointed. A competing proposal by Vism would have offered at least twice as many workforce housing units and space for small businesses too, but not yet another hotel, however unique and specialized it might be. We think the problem arises from the very formulation of the request for proposals. Time and again, when a new development is proposed, city officials moan that they can't demand that the development be devoted to urgently needed workforce housing because they don't control the land. In this case, they do control the use of the city's own land. By pointing in the RFP to the whole scope of the waterfront development plan, they reduce the affordable housing part to rather little. When the city controls a parcel, they should specify that it goes for the hardest thing to get, workforce housing. It is late in the game, but Common Council can still reverse the IURA recommendation and opt for the Vism proposal, which addresses the city's greatest need. Thank you.
I just want to say an observation that I had 2 weeks ago and today. Stephen Smith, 2 weeks ago you were looking on your cell phone the whole time I was speaking, and other people were speaking. today until now, you're looking at your laptop. There is no one anymore to turn to in this city for concerns. I feel, honestly, with all my heart, that I've hit a wall. I've been trying to make appointments with the police chief. I get no response. The mayor does not return my call. That is not governance, okay? In terms of development, okay, I've always said, you know, we're going to hopefully be around for a long time and we can develop this planet. But the pace of development during COVID, all the things that have happened, whether it's reconstructing the police department or developments like this, or behind where I live in Center Ithaca, which is like a war zone again, because I survived the Commons reconstruction. Okay, there's an issue with lighting, which I didn't get to with my other 3 minutes. But in terms of Inlet Island, I think, to me, it seems like a land grab by a couple people, okay? And I'm from Hell's Kitchen in New York. I'm from Manhattan. Manhattan is a prime area. It's very expensive. You have to tread slowly. This is a piece of real estate in the city that is probably going to be very pricey. I haven't been on top of the development in the city, okay? COVID, you have to understand, has taken people's mind off of things, okay? We have a pandemic. We haven't been around each other. Just zooming our way through is not the only answer, okay? A lot of people have said that on the news even. You know, I watch a lot of news. You know, as humans, you know, we also need that one-to-one interaction. But you know, it's just, I just really think you have to slow things down. You have to take a step back before all this development just ruins our city. It's just too much. Where's all this traffic going to go? Inlet Island is such a small little area. I couldn't understand what Teresa said. I could barely make it because of the mask. You know, it's an issue. You know, you're wearing the mask. But I could get a little bit of what she said. But I mean, you know, it's really sad to see just.
Thanks,
to me,
Faye.
it's a land grab.
Is there anyone else who's here to speak on Inlet Island? Or in public comment? Okay, is there a motion to close the public hearing? Moved by Laura, seconded by Donna. All in favor of closing the public hearing? And that carries unanimously. We have one more public hearing, which is on the IURA Fourth Amendment to the IURA Citizenship Plan. Is there anyone here to speak on that topic? We have to go through it anyways for legal purposes. So why don't we open the public hearing? Moved by Donna, seconded by Steve. All in favor of opening the public hearing? And that carries unanimously. Now I'll ask, is there anyone here to speak on that topic? And seeing none, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing. Moved by Laura, seconded by Steve. All in favor of closing the public hearing? And that carries unanimously. We're up to the announcements. Any?
I have no announcements.
Okay. So I guess the first item on our agenda is the couplet. And is this a presentation? Are they zooming in?
They're zooming in and doing a presentation.
Okay.
DOT and SRF folks, are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, Eric. This is Dave Smith.
No.
Yep, I'm here.
I can hear you, Eric. This is
Yes.
Scott.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. This is the first time I think we're trying this at a Common Council meeting where we'll have a remote presentation, but I believe it's all set up appropriately. I'll just introduce the topic a bit, but I won't be doing at least most of the talking today, I don't think. Last month we came and discussed this topic of the Cuga Park development and the related transportation changes that have been proposed by the DOT and the developer for consideration. And so today, last time we started talking about some technical questions related to the impact of the changing Buffalo Street from one-way to one-way eastbound between Fulton and Meadow. And so this time we're joined by the DOT and SRF associates who have done the more detailed analysis related to this and can answer some questions related to that as they exist. And so really, just in general, what's being proposed is a traffic mitigation to the proposed impact of the development. So it is potentially something that I think as a part of the city's transportation plan could be built upon to look a little bit more comprehensively at the whole Route 13 area. But for now, this specifically is related to the mitigation that's proposed by the developer. So does anybody have any general questions about that before I introduce the folks here on Zoom? No? Okay. So we have here today Amy Dake from SRF Associates. They're the transportation consulting firm that is working with the developer. We also have Dave Smith, who's the regional director of our region for the DOT. We have Scott Bates, who's done a lot of the technical work he's the signal engineer for the region for DOT, and Betsy Parmley as well, who's the traffic engineer regionally for the DOT. So they've all joined us today, and thank you so much for doing that. I believe, Amy, you were going to kick things off, right? I believe you should have the ability to share your screen.
Yeah, actually, Scott Bates is going to start by explaining some of the existing conditions and the problems that DOT is seeing with the existing intersections. So I don't know, Scott, if you want to jump right into that.
You know, while Scott is doing that, this is Dave. If I could just jump in while Scott is preparing and sharing his screen there, just to provide maybe some overall context to where we are and kind of how we got here. So certainly with the proposed development, right, it's going to add some traffic. Everybody is certainly aware of the challenges on Route 13 currently. With delays and really crash patterns at some intersections, certainly. So certainly with the proposal, you know, DOT understands and recognizes the city's vision for a more walkable, you know, bikeable community, and Route 13 is a part of that. So certainly in recognition of that, you know, we want to work with the city, with the developer, with Amy and her team as much as possible to come up with the best solution possible that will perform mitigation, because we're adding traffic and you know, without mitigation we'd be adding delay as well. So so in that context, you know, certainly Amy was working on some mitigation, and in you know, previous meeting conversations, one of the things that came out of those is an idea that Scott is going to share that you're somewhat familiar with, I believe, already, but is the idea that maybe absent significant capacity improvement to Route 13 to be able to absorb the additional delay, right, without creating more delay. Absent that, what is something else that could be done to, again, recognize the city's vision for Route 13 and at the same time be able to accommodate the development, which is as well an important part of the city's vision moving forward, particularly, you know, in that area of the city, certainly with the medical facilities, et cetera, et cetera. So we recognize that, and so what Scott's going to share is this idea that we think potentially could go a long way toward that mitigation. And so ideally, really what it is you know, DOT, in, like I said, conversation, came up with this thought and really turned it over to Amy to do the analysis, which would be required for mitigation for development. That's part of the process, right? So Amy did the analysis, and some of that, you know, Scott's going to show you, and Scott, I think, has enhanced that, you know, with more detail, and is certainly going to talk through it. But I just wanted to add that in terms of context as to how we got here, because again, we think this is a solution absent, you know, other mitigation that would require, you know, other capacity improvements or some other mechanism to be able to absorb that delay. So I'll turn it over to Scott unless there are any questions before Scott takes over.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'd just like to jump in real quick before Scott takes over. Thanks, Dave. You know, that was a great explanation. I'd just like to point out one thing, and that's that this, what you're calling mitigation for this project, is really more than just this project. This will provide mitigation to allow the waterfront development that the city rezoned recently. So it's more than just this project. It's also the City Harbor project. It's the rest of the waterfront area, which includes a parcel that was currently or previously owned by DOT. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear as well.
Okay, so I guess with that, I'll get started. And thanks, Dave, for the intro, and Amy for the little bit more information on the background. So, can everyone hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yes, Scott, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I just want to start off with, I think we've come, in the end, I think it's a viable solution, and both Amy and I will talk about it. Amy a little bit more in detail as far as the improvements that are involved with it. But I just want to start off with some of the challenges in identifying the mitigation and some of the existing issues that the city of Ithaca are currently, encountering now. So overall, I think it's recognized that the city of Ithaca roadway system is at capacity, and it's beyond simple signal timing improvements. I work directly with Eric and Tim, and I can definitely say a lot of the complaints that we get here in the regional office are a lot of signal timing, but a lot of just operations, congestion, delays, queues, all within the heart of the city of Ithaca. So obviously from a public perception, there's issues out there. And I'll show you later, we have the data that supports some of the results of what those congestions and issues are really creating in terms of safety. So the capacity is a combination of multiple factors. So we have very high peak hour volumes. It's the number of ped crossings. So pedestrian crossings are great for pedestrians. That provides an opportunity for them to safely cross at signalized intersections. But there is a negative to that. Obviously, we are limited with signal timing adjustments when we have to give the proper walk time and don't walk time for these pedestrians at these intersections. Another limiting factor is the short mid blocks at all the intersections. So these are the segments. So if you can see my cursor, all these short mid blocks within the city of Ithaca, we can't adjust the signal timing and crank up the cycle length, because what happens is the queues extend back into the adjacent intersections. So we're limited by some of the timing improvements we can do there. Another limiting factor is the railroad that exists basically on the west side. So every time a train comes down, that preempts the signal system and basically gives the priority to the railroad. So, as anyone that's in that traffic and you can see a train come down the railroad, you can see the impacts to the signal timing, to the congestion, to the progression. So that all plays a role as well. So it's a combination of all those factors that really it limits us and it challenges us. So we're well beyond signal time improvements. If I adjust the signal at an intersection, it's basically, I always like to use the metaphor, I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I'm going to help one approach, but I'm really going to hurt another approach. So then, the following week I could get the same call at the same intersection, but it'll be the approach that I just fixed, the one that I just took away the time. So just something to keep in mind as far as signal timing along the corridor. The second challenge that we had is that it's limited to no room to construct capacity improvements without significant impacts to existing buildings, multiple intersections, the railroad, and without right-of-way impacts. So that was another a challenge. The third challenge, I would say, is the city of Ithaca's vision to be a more pedestrian and bicycle-friendly community. So therefore, improvements such as additional lanes and highway widening, which may address the traffic impacts, but that wouldn't really align with the city's overall vision for the roadway network. So trying to, appease the city on their overall vision for the community was another challenge. And then a fourth bullet that I had was that the capacity issues that I previously mentioned, they create operational and crash patterns that exist all along Route 13. So the roadway network, the roadway network being at capacity is even more sensitive to any additional trips. So if we have an existing crash pattern at one intersection and we add more trips and traffic to that intersection, well, those problems would just magnify as a result of those additional trips. So it's the whole network as a whole is more sensitive to any additional trips. So those were some of the challenges that we encountered. I'm gonna switch my screen to show a collision diagram at this point. It's just kind of capture the crash patterns that are occurring. So what you're seeing here, this intersection is Fulton and Buffalo Street. And so, in traffic engineering, this is called a collision diagram. And so for each, and I'll zoom in so you can see closer. So each diagram represents a crash that's occurred at this intersection. And this data is pulled through, we have a crash software that pulls it right from the DMV, and we took 3 years of crash data. And you can see, obviously there's a crash pattern here at Buffalo and Fulton, and this is pretty significant. It's very odd to have like a right angle crash pattern that you see here. The predominant pattern is southbound with westbound. So, and that is the movement that would actually be, the westbound movement is what would be taken away under the proposal. So, but you can see there's a lot of crashes here. 64 crashes over 3 years and 17 of them being right angle. So a lot of it is, when you're at capacity and you're sitting in traffic, you get more aggressive drivers. They get impatient and they try to make maneuvers, and that in result creates crashes. So at this intersection, if you compare this to similar intersections across the state, this is 3 times the statewide average. Similarly, Buffalo to Taconic, we have some crashes here as well. A lot of the crashes that we're seeing here are a result of Buffalo and Fulton. There's queues that extend past the bridge and extend into the Taconic intersection. To give you a sense, crashes at the Taconic intersection are twice the statewide rate. And then if you go to, let me zoom out a little bit. Can you guys see Meadow at Buffalo? But at that one, it's twice the statewide rate as well. So we have crash patterns all along Buffalo that are pretty high and excessive. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing, and I think Amy's going to go through a schematic of the proposed concept to change Buffalo Street and one-way conversion that's between Fulton and Meadow Street. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then when she's done, I'll continue with some more crash and operational benefits, and also finish up with some simulations.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now, and this is a schematic that we prepared that shows the improvements that would be required in order to make the mitigation that Dave had spoken about possible in this area. And the mitigation that we're talking about is converting the block of Buffalo Street between Fulton and Meadow. So it's one block, and we're going to convert that to one-way westbound. That's the proposal. Or sorry, one-way eastbound. So that would remove the westbound traffic through this block. So in order to do that, the first thing we would do is some minor signal timing improvements up at the intersection of Court and Meadow. The second thing is, because we're removing the westbound traffic on Buffalo Street, we no longer have a westbound through movement from Buffalo, and we no longer have the northbound left turn from Meadow Street. So that requires some changes to the signal at this location. We would change the striping on Buffalo Street to make a right turn only movement, so you can only go north on Meadow at that location. And then we'd eliminate the northbound left turn lane that exists currently. We're not showing anything in its place at this time. There's certainly some options that we could look at as far as pedestrian improvements, on-street parking, bicycle improvements, something that can be explored with both the city and the state DOT. Then on Buffalo Street, in the segment that would be converted, we are showing some curb extensions at the intersection at Meadow, as well as at the intersection at Fulton. This would shorten the pedestrian crossing at this location and make some improvements for pedestrians. We're also looking into the possibility of how we can provide some kind of bicycle treatment through this section as well. Moving down to Seneca and Meadow down here, some minor signal timing modifications here. Right now, we have 4 northbound through lanes at this location. We would be able to convert the westernmost lane to a left turn only lane now to turn left onto Seneca, which is currently one-way westbound. And then over at Seneca and Fulton, we would have some signal timing modifications, and we are proposing to restripe what is currently a right turn only lane. Southbound on Fulton, we would restripe that to, I'm sorry, it's currently a through and right turn lane. No, it's a right turn only lane. We want to make it a through and right turn lane all the way back to the intersection. So this striping here would go away. And then over at Taconic and Buffalo, we would have some changes as well, some minor signal timing modifications. But then to Scott's point about the crash patterns and also looking at the additional traffic that we would have to add to this intersection coming northbound on Taconic, we are looking at prohibiting the eastbound and westbound left turn movements at this intersection. And those movements right now are relatively small in volume during the peak hours. And then the northbound left turn lane on Taconic Boulevard would need to be extended its length all the way down to Seneca Street. So those are the modifications to the roadways, kind of a high level concept of what would need to be done to accommodate these improvements. And I will turn it back over to Scott. I can stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Okay, so can everyone see the closing diagram again on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so what Amy's explained, I'm going to show you some of the benefits from the proposal. So it provides both safety and operational improvements really without major reconstruction widening. So your cost is really limited. And what we're really trying to do is really maximize that curb to curb space and really match it to the volumes, and at the same time try to address some of the safety issues that we have on the roadway network. So some of the safety benefits. So I'm going to just zoom in here at
Hey,
Fulton and Buffalo.
Scott, can you hold up for 1 second here? We just had a technical issue happen. I'll tell you in a minute when you can go. Yeah, no problem.
Okay. You want me to continue, Eric, or?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
I'll let you know. Okay, Scott, you can continue. Thanks.
Good to go?
Yes.
Okay. So some of the safety benefits is that, at this intersection, because we are changing and limiting the amount of conflicting movements, 41% of the total crashes at this intersection can be prevented as part of this proposed concept. And also 95% of all these right angle crashes, all these crashes that you're seeing with south to west that are occurring at this intersection, since those movements wouldn't even be allowed, those would be eliminated, obviously. So 95% of all the right angle crashes, that's a large portion that's happening at this intersection, would be preventable under the proposed concept. At Taconic and Buffalo, it's anticipated about 25% of the total crashes can be prevented. And similar in Meadow and Buffalo, it's approximately 20% of the total crashes can be prevented under the proposed concept. So, and also I call it like an indirect operational benefit by having less crashes at intersections. Every time one of these crashes, this is happening 3 times the normal rate. And so when you're at capacity and one of these crashes happens.
Eric, can you have him clarify what intersection that is?
Yeah, Scott, can you clarify? I know the first intersection you were talking about was Buffalo and Taconic.
This is, I'm talking about Buffalo and Fulton.
Okay.
So, this point is really applicable to any of the intersections. But, when you have a crash or an accident at one of those intersections, you're going to have backups. There's an element there where you have to get the police there. You're causing backups. Cars can't get around. And that creates backups, especially when those incidents happen during a peak hour. So obviously the less crashes that you can prevent at an intersection, there's an operational benefit to that as well. So they really go hand in hand. Like I said earlier, when you're at capacity and drivers are frustrated, they're going to make more aggressive movements, which in turn will create some crashes at intersections. So I think this proposal really has a bunch of safety benefits that's tied to it. Operational benefits. So I'm going to go to this screen. So I'm going to talk at Fulton at Buffalo right here. But the proposed lane configurations at Fulton and Buffalo really enables us to implement new signal phase changes. So the southbound right turn onto Buffalo will always receive a green indication. The exception is when you have a ped crossing or when the railroad is in a preemption mode. But for the most part, that will always receive a green. So the progression along Fulton Street is helped by these improvements here at this intersection. So, not only are the right angle crashes are going to be addressed just because of the change, but those rear ends, the cars are always stopping in a queue and getting impatient. I think there's going to be a residual effect also on the rear end crashes all along Fulton Street by this improvement. So that kind of goes along. There's improved progression all along Buffalo at Taconic, Fulton, and Meadow, really at all these 3 intersections as a result of this proposal. The modification really rebalances and maximizes the lane usage on Buffalo Street based on the traffic demand and improves the eastbound queue issues on Buffalo Street. Currently the queues that are going eastbound on Buffalo, they back up to Taconic and even beyond. So, the issues here are really affecting 2 intersections. And, under this proposal, because of the phase change, it really addresses those queue issues. So we can really address 2 intersections. So as a result of it, the overall level of service is improved. So, not everyone is familiar with level of service, but just in a generic state, level of service is a traffic engineering term, is kind of like it states the health of an intersection. And it gives it a letter grade. And it's almost like when you're in school, A is like the best, it means really good operations. And then F is failing. There's high delays and it's just failing conditions. So the level of service, when we throw it into the traffic engineering software that we use is Synchro, the level of service at Fulton and Buffalo is projected to go go from a D to a C. So there's some small improvements. The eastbound Buffalo that was projected to be an F goes to a C. So we had failing conditions eastbound at Buffalo and Fulton, and that goes now to a C. Level service for the eastbound left on Buffalo and Meadow projected to be an E. That goes to a B. So there's operational, it's not just safety, there's operational benefits as well. And so when we did all the synchro, we put in the volumes, we put in the projected volumes for the developments, the proposed configurations and geometry, we use synchro, which is really a traffic engineering standard for software. And then we simulate it, and I'm going to show you the simulations, but basically the simulations estimate over a 50% reduction in total network delay when you look at the whole network as a grid, and a 40% in travel time for the entire roadway. And then if you're just looking at Fulton southbound, because everyone's familiar with the peak hour backups and queues, there's a 22% reduction in delay for southbound on Fulton Street. So there's a significant operational benefit to this. And that being said, this is not highway widening, this is not additional lanes, it's just basically using what's out there and really just modifying some of the lane assignments and really changing only one block on Buffalo Street to address both operational and safety concerns. So, and that being said, there's a really great benefit cost ratio. We haven't finalized the cost associated with it, but I can almost guarantee it. The benefit cost is going to be very good for these improvements to address both operational and safety. So now I'm going to show you, I guess, two simulations. One is going to be the existing network, proposed volumes, but no improvements. So I am going to run some simulations so you can kind of get a feel. Obviously, this is the PM peak 2021. This is SRF volumes, but there's no improvements here. Obviously we have congestion on southbound Fulton Street. Everyone can relate that there's a congestion on Buffalo Street in both directions. But you can see, in PM peak, there's definitely some congestion that backs up. And I'll just let it run for 10 or 15 seconds. But keep in mind, these are simulations. It simulates what the data we put in there. There are other factors that can make these conditions worse. Obviously, the railroad, you don't mimic the railroad preemption that goes in here. You can do pedestrian crossings, but all the driveways that coming in, cars stopping to get into a commercial business. It doesn't go to that microscopic level, but it does paint the picture when you're trying to compare apples and apples on different concepts when one has merit or not. So, and that's just, that's if there was no improvement. So I'm going to show you now the proposed concept. I'll speed this up a little bit. So you can see here, we changed the configuration. Buffalo now is just one way. Southbound, still pretty heavy traffic, but you can see it's flowing better. You can see that right turn really doesn't stop. We removed the lefts here. Seneca, when we analyzed this too, when I first came up with the concept, I really just thought of a couplet type, and I kind of forecasted traffic to kind of use Court Street, and it works. I used 100%, kind of getting diverted and kind of loop around, and knowing that this would never stop, and it worked. And after we took it, and that was really at a high level. When we spoke with the city, and we had SRF, they worked with the MPO, and really got a better feel where traffic could come from. And I think it was assumed 90% of the traffic would use Seneca. And so this model really represents Seneca being used as the main, I guess it would be the westbound going back towards Buffalo. and it still works. So, you know, and this provides multiple. So now you have multiple options to go westbound. Seneca works. We know that Court Street could handle it if there's a reason why Seneca couldn't be utilized. And obviously, we're making the operations here better, and also along Buffalo and Taconic. So this is the proposed model. So as you can see, it's pretty, just from a visual perspective, you can see the difference. And with that being said, I kind of concludes our overview of the concept.
Does that change if we're looking at morning rush hour versus evening?
Scott, were you able to hear that question?
No, I couldn't.
I'm sorry. So the question was, is there a significant difference if we were to look at the morning peak hour versus the PM peak?
So what you saw was the PM, and that was obviously the worst case scenario. And so, you know, we're pretty confident the PM would dictate. It was pretty significant. Amy, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more, the comparison between AM and PM, but I think it was pretty significant to the point where we just analyzed the PM because it was the heaviest volume. Meadow Street has a lot more, I say northbound has reserved capacity, so there was not as much failing level of service for the AM peak. But Amy, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right, Scott. PM peak is significantly worse than the AM peak, and that's definitely the condition that we need to be looking at to see what needs to be done out here.
Cynthia, just if you wouldn't mind giving it a try too, just to make sure that it definitely does work. Earlier we had it working on all the microphones, so.
I have a few questions, but maybe I should wait until they're
It's-
ready for questions.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Are they ready for questions?
Are you guys ready for some questions, or do you have some more things you want to present?
No, I think we're ready for questions.
Okay.
Right, Scott?
All right, let's test and see
Yes.
if Cynthia's mic
Great.
works. If not, I'll happy to
Thank you.
relay.
So you were saying that this is based on 2021 data. Do you have any models that use pre-COVID data?
So yes, so this is actually, the traffic volumes that we use in these models are from the study that was done for the Cayuga Park development. The traffic volumes were originally collected before COVID. So when Scott said that this is a 2021 model, it means that we're projecting the 2021 conditions, assuming that both the Cayuga Park and City Harbor developments have been constructed. So this is, it's kind of a future condition with those developments in place.
Did that include the existence of the Tabor Street Bridge?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I watched the model and it was very cute. Thank you. So basically, Seneca Street and Taconic Boulevard is going to carry all the traffic going to Taconic Boulevard, to Cliff Street, and some of the traffic that is going to Hector and Floral. And it's all going to go through that little intersection of Taconic and Seneca, which I realize in your model you have Taconic at that intersection being 2 lanes northbound, which is currently 1 lane northbound because there's a bump out on either side. And being someone who lives in that neighborhood, who crosses this intersection several times a day, Seneca now it's not uncommon for that traffic to back up and for that little section between Taconic, between Seneca and Buffalo, to be full. And I'm trying to envision how that intersection is going to carry that weight for all of Taconic Boulevard and Cliff Street. So that's one of my questions.
Yeah, so that, I'll start and maybe Scott can jump in, but all of that traffic is traveling through that intersection now. It's just doing it in a different direction. So right now you have westbound traffic on Buffalo Street that is through traffic. It passes through the intersection of Fulton, and then when it comes to Taconic, it either has the option to obviously turn left go straight through, or turn right onto Taconic. Similarly, you have southbound traffic on Fulton that is turning right now onto Buffalo, and that traffic is arriving at the Taconic intersection also, and either turning left, going straight through, or turning right. So if you are east of Meadow Street and you want to get to this intersection, you would no longer be able to use Buffalo Street to get there. So you would have to either go across Court Street and come south on Fulton, make the right turn, and you'd be back to where you were previously because you would have been coming through the intersection. So there's really no change in that respect at Taconic. Or you would go down to Seneca and come across Seneca, and then you would have to go north on Taconic, and that's where you're seeing the change. So now if you wanted to go either up 89 on Taconic or continue on 96 up the hill, you would either have to go straight through across Buffalo to go north on Taconic, or you would make the left turn to go up Route 96. And so based on our model and looking at the traffic signal timings and everything that's going on at that intersection, you do currently have a left turn lane there. There are 3 lanes. The left turn lane is kind of short though, because you do have on-street parking on the east side of the street. So one of the mitigations that we're looking at is extending that left turn lane all the way to the south to Seneca to accommodate the queuing. Because as you mentioned, there is currently some northbound queuing that extends back to Seneca. So we're trying to mitigate that impact by
I
extending
understand.
that left turn lane.
So basically, what I'm saying is northbound traffic coming from Route 13 south is most likely to turn left on Seneca. Downtown traffic coming from State Street or the Commons is going to likely take Seneca rather than Court. They might
Yes.
take Court. So,
I agree, and that's
so
why
all
we
of that
modeled it.
traffic, Seneca then is going to carry that traffic that has to go to Taconic, to Cliff, to Floral, to Hector, is all going to go through Seneca Street and that intersection, that little tiny intersection at Seneca and Taconic, and will need to carry through that intersection. So that is a significant concern to me. The second was something that you had mentioned in your presentation that I hope that you can detail a little bit. You said that you were going to prohibit during peak periods at the intersection of Taconic and Buffalo, you were going to prohibit left turns. So are you saying that if you're coming eastbound from Cliff, you cannot take a left to go north onto Taconic?
That's correct.
How does someone from Mecklenburg go to Trumansburg?
Well, they'd have to go around the block.
They'd have to go, wait, so,
So you'd have to continue on Buffalo Street to Fulton, turn right, go down to Seneca, turn right, go across Seneca, turn right, and then come back north. And honestly, that volume of traffic is very, very low.
I don't think so, because people are going to, again, you were talking about this is a mitigation to anticipate development of Inlet Island, and we have parks, we have recreation, we have sports venues that all are occurring at Cass Park. There's a lot of activity where people are turning left from Cliff to go north onto Taconic. So I find that whole area having to do with that intersection deserving of more attention. I'd also like to expand the study to include State Street, the impact on State Street and those intersections, which I do think will be affected by these proposed changes.
So we did include State Street in the study, but our assumptions on diverting traffic diverted the majority of the traffic to Seneca. So if some of the traffic were to divert to State, we would have some minor impacts on State and less impacts on Seneca.
Well,
Scott, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I just want to elaborate a little bit more, I'll start at Taconic and Buffalo. And like I said, we're trying to maximize what we have as far as lanes. And so right now we have 2 lanes, eastbound and westbound on Buffalo at Taconic, right? So we have about, in the PM peak, and we'll say it's the worst peak hour of the day, we have about 2,000 vehicles entering that intersection, right? For the left turn that we want to restrict, there's 18 vehicles during that peak hour. During the worst peak hour, there's only 18 vehicles that would have to be rerouted. And then in the opposite, there's like only 67. So what happens out there is that because of the opposing movement is so high, you have one vehicle that's taken up a whole throughment, and cars are either got to swerve to get around, but basically they're taking up a whole throughment, which is reducing the capacity at that intersection and really creating a lot of the issues. Another point is that the backups at Buffalo and Fulton really back up at the Taconic and also contribute to that. So, when we're talking about the volume, 18 vehicles on one restricted on lefts, when you have 2,000 is really a small percentage when you're talking about them occupying a full through lane. So this something I'm trying to, put numbers to why we came up with that restriction. And then also at Seneca, at Fulton, part of that mitigation was converting a right turn to a shared through right. So you're actually getting some more output southbound to go through that intersection to address. So that signal timing could be modified to help some of the backups that you see there and to accommodate the additional volume that you're going to see on Seneca. But again, you have options. It's not just Seneca. We kind of did it worst case. Let's assume all the trips are going to use Seneca and it works. And let's try all the trips are going to use Court Street, which we know they're not going to. It still works that way. So the concept has definitely flexibility. And that's why we had SRF kind of look at and take a deeper dive into it just to make sure we weren't missing anything when we first proposed it. So
I appreciate that. I will say, because again, I know these intersections intimately, the illegal use of private property to avoid those turns is a very active pastime. Whether or not you're going through the bank there, an Island Health and Fitness parking lot, or the Pete's Gas parking lot. So I appreciate the interest in reducing the accident rate at Buffalo and Fulton. I am concerned that the anxiety and stress level will be transferred to other intersections, and the ability to serve those needs are just going to be transferred to different locations.
So I just wanted to interject because we do have a lot on the agenda tonight, and we don't have time to be discussing this all night. So if others do have comments, maybe just try to keep them economical. And I'll just say I agree with what Cynthia said. I have concerns about rerouting traffic down Seneca Street as well. George?
Thanks, Steph. I certainly agree that traveling east on Buffalo Street in the morning is a big problem, and the intersection of Taconic and Buffalo Street is one of the worst in the city. There's no question about it. I didn't realize our consultant was hired by the developers of Carpenter Park. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, as Mr. Bates said, you can rob Peter, but you have to pay Paul sometimes. And if you actually go there in the afternoon, and you see how many cars are traveling west on Buffalo Street and on Seneca Street, the whole idea of putting all those cars on Seneca Street seems crazy, absolutely crazy. And to make people turn right off of Seneca onto Taconic, that very short block, is also just robbing Paul or Peter or whoever. The other thing we haven't talked about is if people miss that turn onto Seneca Street heading west, they're going to have to go to Court Street, which is now a very quiet residential street, and up until now has been considered the main westbound bicycle route in the city. So I understand you're trying to sell this with increased bike safety, but you're actually decreasing bike safety on Court Street. Finally, I'll say, if there's a problem, like an accident on Seneca Street, say, you no longer have the option of going west on Buffalo. So you could have, you're going to be making things worse. And I'd also like to point out that there's businesses on Buffalo Street that would be affected by this. I don't know if anybody's spoken to them. There's residents on Buffalo Street. This seems to me like making things possible farther north with DOT at the expense of this part of the West End. Thank you.
Laura?
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. I agree with some of the comments made by colleagues. I noted that we didn't really see the potential impact going into the neighborhoods on the eastern side of Buffalo. I'm concerned about the spillover traffic into the quieter neighborhoods. And I also will just say I appreciated I think it was Amy's comment that while this study was perhaps sparked by the Cuba Park development, we have a lot of development going on the West End. And that's intentional. The waterfront plan intentionally speaks to the city's desire for development on the West End. So I just want to make that comment because we might be talking about this specific to the Cuba Park development where there's shovels in the ground at the moment, but there is a lot of development on the West End. But if you could address the bike safety that my colleague George raises on Court Street and throughout, but also the impact in neighborhoods to the west, to the east of the area of study.
Well, one thing I would say about the impact on neighborhoods to the east is that, on Buffalo Street, you have a school. And right now, Buffalo Street is carrying a fair amount of westbound traffic. And we're talking about moving that westbound traffic to Seneca Street, which is already a one-way street that's capable of handling that additional traffic. It's designed for that. And, you've got neighborhoods, residences on Buffalo as well. So while you may view it as moving a problem from one location to another, I think we're actually moving traffic to a roadway that's more capable of handling it. I don't see a lot of traffic opting to use Court Street instead because you still have to enter the traffic stream on Fulton where it's quite heavy to go south to that Buffalo Street intersection. And I think if you're already east of Meadow Street, I think you're going to find your way more likely to Seneca Street to make that westbound travel across Route 13.
I
Donna?
think that was one of the initial concerns too, that both Tim Logan and Eric Hathaway brought to our attention, and we worked with the Ithaca's MPO to make sure the impacts to the neighborhoods to the east, and that, you know, they have a big travel demand model that they use for any significant changes, and kind of see what the impacts are to the whole community as a whole. And I think it was very minimum. Is that your recollection, Eric, too?
Well, I think what the model suggested is that a lot of people would, like we've talked about, would probably, the overwhelming majority would opt for the more southerly route to Cayuga Street. And so the neighborhoods in question, you know, Court Street would be less likely to see a significant change, an uptick.
I'm sorry, I think Donna had a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I do, but it's pretty much the same question everybody else has had about westbound traffic coming from most other parts of the city. Right, we would either go on Court Street or Cascadilla Street and then go south on Fulton and get stuck in traffic, or we would go west on Seneca and make a right on Taconic and then try to make a left onto Route 96 from Taconic. That sounds terrible. That's already a bad intersection. So I don't see the net gain. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, at this point, I mean, we have the decision, it's down for circulation, so maybe what are the next steps? I mean, the proposal is to circulate this and to just get more public feedback, or are we looking at adjusting the study, or?
I just wanted to respond to something that George said, and in fact, the developer did fund this traffic study, but at our request, because we did not simply have the money in our budget to do that. So I just wanted to clear that up, and I also wanted to, and I think Eric could probably speak to this a little bit better, is in that we have a plan to do a much larger traffic study, citywide traffic study, because this whole area really does need to be analyzed. And the thought was that this solution could help in the immediate. It may not be forever if we, in 5 years, have completed a citywide traffic study and maybe find a better solution. So I just wanted to make that clear. Would you say that's accurate, Eric?
Well, I think it is an opportunity as part of the transportation and parking plan. The parking plan piece has already started. The transportation plan is in scoping. I certainly think there's an opportunity based on the work that's already been done, pretty extensive analysis throughout up and down the Route 13 corridor and a little bit beyond, for Stantec, our consultant, to build on that. You know, it's obviously the scope of what this project has been doing is trying to focus on specific mitigation for their project, and they've had to look at a fairly wide area with that. I definitely think there's an opportunity for us to potentially take that within the concept of our transportation plan and look a little bit more comprehensively at everything that matters to us, not just mitigating the impact for a specific development. So I think that that's certainly true.
I had George and then Cynthia, and then we really do have to make a decision on this.
Just a general comment. I appreciate what you said, Joanne, clarifying that. I apologize if I was being snarky. The point I'd like to make is that, and DOT didn't really understand this when they did the octopus redesign. That's why Fulton Street's a nightmare now. People live and do business in the West End. They don't just drive through it. It's not all about getting through the West End as fast as you can.
Cynthia?
Thank you, George. And it's good to know that there's going to be a larger citywide traffic study. To that point, is there going to, or can we initiate an effort to have a traffic study that involves the town? One of the impacts that we have is obviously if you are between the lakes and you're going east to west or vice versa, you have to go through that intersection. One of the concepts that I understand was discussed over a decade ago was a connecting road that was in the town that would allow options for Cliff and Taconic and Hector to actually avoid this whole area in a way to go south, which may in fact reduce some of the traffic. One of the things that I anticipate is likely to happen for this, for example, is people will try to find ways higher up the hill to go from Cliff to hop onto Hector, so that they can only make one left turn instead of having to do an entire loop to go north on Taconic. So obviously, people are going to find other ways anyway. If there could be a larger study that involved the town that could provide more options to keep the traffic from coming into the area to begin with, might be able to reduce some of the pressure.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a cascading effect of any change like this, so you're right. I think potentially when I think about that idea, probably it'd be appropriate to engage the MPO, engage Fernando de Aragon, because he obviously represents a much larger area than just the city for potentially funding and for coordinating an effort like that.
So, I think you can tell from just hearing us tonight, I don't think anyone's particularly thrilled by this proposal, but understanding that this is also tied to the future of the waterfront, there's a lot of things to weigh. And there were some things tonight that I heard that, were appealing, like relieving traffic on Buffalo, I think could really help. There is a school there, and, there's a big development going in right now. But I think, like everybody, I'm concerned that we're just like asking too much of Seneca Street, that, worried about what the future impacts will be. But all of that said, this is down to circulate, and so I'm curious what people think, if we're willing to circulate this and just try to get more public input on it and then continue the discussion. And if so, is there a motion on that? Moved by Steve, seconded by Donna.
What is the alternative to circulating?
To stop it and not continue, and just say we're not interested in this. Laura?
It's been moved and seconded. I guess I would third, because the proposal we had been looking at involved turning Court Street one way, and I was not in favor of that. So this is complex. It may not be perfect. It is an improvement, to my mind, on what we had been looking at an earlier time. So I will third that.
Steve?
I just want to add, I think what George said earlier is important. Like, we do have to mitigate the traffic to the extent possible and improve the situation as much as possible. But I don't see it as the city's job to help people move about the county. I see it as allowing people to move as well as possible, but keeping in mind that our job really isn't to design these roads in a way that helps people move through the city, because there are people who need to live, work, and play here. And there's a lot that's been written about cities that have focused on helping people move through their cities. And we're fortunately now in an era where a lot of those decisions are being unmade. We have cities like Rochester that are reclaiming lands that were dedicated to moving people through their city. And so in Syracuse too, and turning that land back into parkland, turning it into to land that can be used to develop small businesses, and re-knit the fabric of that community back together. And so I just want to second what George said, and that's why I'll be supporting this.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. So all those in favor of circulating, and that carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, folks from the DOT and from SRF. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Hey, thank you.
So we're going to go back to the next on the agenda is the amendment to the IURA Citizen Participation Plan. And I see Nels here. And do you want to move it? Okay. Laura's going to move it. And is there a second? Cynthia seconds. So this is the IURA Citizen Participation Plan. Cynthia beat you to it. So it's been moved and seconded. So Nels, do you maybe want to just say a little bit about what's going on here?
Sure, yeah, and there was a confusion on the agenda because it wasn't the citizenship plan, it's a citizen participation plan, as it says on the action item here. And what this is establishes the procedures for engaging the public in proposals to spend HUD funds in the community on projects. So during the COVID period, they created a expedited process where it's a 5-day notice period with 3-day of public comment, and that expires at the end of July. We still have COVID funding coming in with, the variants running around. We want to keep that option open. We can always expand it to 30 days as the normal standard is. But if we have a project that we want to find funding for in a quicker time frame, this gives us the opportunity to do it consistent with the HUD guidelines. So they have been extending the deadlines on many of the projects, and this might be one where we find a project we want to fund that's timely or time sensitive, and we would just quicken the opportunity to do that. So this is extending this to be consistent with whatever HUD deadlines there are for those projects. So it'll be consistent with the federal regulations, but if we don't take action, our clock will stop on July 31st, and we'll go back to the 30-day time periods.
Thanks for that explanation. Is there any question or discussion? Yeah?
Just a quick question. How beneficial has it been to have these new guidelines?
Well, it can be helpful when we have meetings that occur, where we don't have time to make an action meeting occurs, and then we have to look at 31 days, where are we? It gets pushed to like 2 months out, and a lot of these projects you really want to implement as quickly as possible. They already seem to take forever to start, from start to finish, to get going. So I think it could be helpful. It's not critical, I don't think. I think we could live with the 30-day comment period, but I think we could find a project where we'd really like to find a way to speed up implementation, because it would impact, people experiencing COVID-related issues. It could be like the REACH program going into the homeless areas and providing health services. If they run out of money and they want to seek more funding, we could extend this relatively quickly, for example.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comment? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thanks, Nels. Next up is the Inlet Island Preferred Developer, and I believe former Alderperson Chris Prue is going to be presenting on this.
Great. Well, thanks for allowing me to present the project and its background and history a little bit. And many of you have attended some of our meetings, so I appreciate that, and I know you're somewhat up to speed. Just for everyone's benefit, I'm on the board of the Ithaca and Urban Renewal Agency and the chair of its Economic Development Committee. So I'm just going to give just a brief background going all the way back to 2006 of the parcels that we're talking about, and then the process that the IRA went through to kind of get to this point, and that brings us to the discussion we'll have tonight about what we're seeking from Common Council. And then the proposed preferred developer will also give a short presentation, I think, Nels, right, on the concept. Yeah. So just kind of quickly going back, Finger Lakes Development was originally awarded preferred development status for a project on Inlet Island in 2006. And brought forward a proposal to the Common Council in 2008 that was rejected by the council at the time. So when that happened, the IRA did not rescind that preferred developer status, nor did that agreement or resolution have a termination date. So although economic conditions through 2008 and the economic downturn and everything that followed, basically there was no proposal that came forward until they came back to us in late 2020 with a revised proposal. Kind of catching us a little off guard, to be honest, because we didn't know in some ways that option was still out there. So what we decided at that time, though, was to rescind that preferred developer status from 2006 so that we could foster a more open, transparent, and competitive process for a potential disposition of city and IRA lands on the northern end of Inlet Island. So what happened from then is the creation of that process. And what we did is an RFEI, a request for expressions of interest, to encourage developers to bring forward basically project concepts. That process is slightly different than what we did with the Green Street Garage, which I know all of you are familiar with. And that was quite intentional. We wanted a lighter weight process for this so that neither the developer, IRA, the city would overinvest in resources for a concept that ultimately Common Council might not find suitable. And so specifically, we're here tonight because, you know, we've kind of worked through that lighter weight process to be able to engage in broader issues that the council might want to discuss about how development happens in the West End. The timing of this proposal after the traffic study would have loved to gone first. Anyway, so what happened is, you know, we designed that RFEI. It was issued by IRA in March of 2021, and the Economic Development Committee set out to establish a scoring system to rank the proposals. That scoring system was quite similar, actually, though, to what we did use for Green Street Garage. So we looked at 4 criteria: community benefit, project concept, you know, how much what's the components of the concept, the financial capacity and project feasibility. So can the developer basically implement the project? And then the financial terms for the city, primarily, like what are our costs, what are our revenues, et cetera. 3 proposals were received. So Finger Lakes Development submitted one in April, Waterfront Alchemy and Strategic Elements LLC submitted one, and we got one from Vism Development, as you heard tonight from a member of the public. In May, we held a special meeting of the Economic Development Committee so that each of the developers could present their proposals, engage in dialogue and discussion with the committee, agency board members, and some of you from council who are there. The outcome of that was that we requested each of the developers to submit clarifications on several issues so that we could kind of compare apples to apples on key components of like parking, housing units, waterfront access, financials, and responses that Finger Lakes Development submitted are in your packet if you had a chance to take a look at that. We received additional public comment at the June meeting and additional discussion with the applicants, and we scored the proposal, and Finger Lakes Development narrowly was the highest scoring of those proposals by just a small margin. So EDC recommended to the IRA board that we move forward with Finger Lakes Development as the preferred developer for that parcel. The board unanimously adopted that decision, but only after robust discussion of all 3 proposals. The option of accepting none of those proposals, which I know has been discussed, and then the related issues of density on the island, parking, public access, as well as continued and boating, water-based uses for that island, and keeping that option in the city. So including tonight's public hearing, there have also been 4 opportunities already for public comment at the Economic Development Committee twice, the IROA, and then tonight. So what you're going to hear tonight is about the Finger Lakes development concept. So just to sum up its kind of main components, there are 50-plus units of affordable housing managed and developed by Ithaca Neighborhood Housing, a mid-size long-term stay hotel, 243 parking spaces, improvements to the Hugo Waterfront Trail and the promenade, the potential for some on-site solar energy production, a payment to the city for the land at fair market value with potential some adjustment for environmental remediation, which I'm sure we'll talk about tonight, ongoing property sales and lodging tax revenues, and would likely require both New York State low-income housing tax credits to make the affordable housing project work, and probably the developer would seek a CTAP or some other abatement, probably for the hotel. So essentially, you know, we're seeking Common Council's ability to, you know, kind of transfer the land to the IRA that the city owns, because there are parcels that the IRA already owns. We would then seek, with sort of essentially that transfer of land as being your kind of initial support of the concept, to then enter into a development and disposition agreement and bring that to council. So it's kind of a 2-step process on your part. But I think it's important that any kind of key issues for discussion really get resolved at this level, because that was the point, is to kind of do this lightweight process. We don't want to go through several months of negotiating a development and disposition agreement with the developer only to find out that there are larger issues to be addressed later. So I think this is a good opportunity to raise those. I think I'll stop there, unless Nels wants to add anything else.
That's a good summary.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
A brief presentation and highlighting of the proposal.
Sir, can you put up the, do I have a mouse that I can, or an arrow? Do I get that?
Or do you want to swap seats, maybe? if you put the, you want to put the laptop here and Steve can drive and then I can swap seats.
I am left-handed.
Oh, you know, it popped right out there.
Let's get going here.
Cool. There we go. Okay, may I proceed?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
go for it. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, my name is, it stopped working. Oh, I still got the arrow. Let me just click. Uh-oh. Here it is, I got it. Okay, so my name is Steve Flash, and I am part of the Finger Lakes Development Team. Scott Lamb is here, Joe Bowes is also here from INHS. And I'm going to try to do a very quick run through essentially geographically on this project, if I can get it to stay playing. Come on. Okay, there we go. So this is the INHS building called the Anchors. It's 50 to 56 units. And it's a 5-story building. This would be the hometel, which is a combination of apartments and, you know something? I might just go without it if it doesn't stay. This is the Stays building. It's a hometel, also a 5-story building, roughly 70 units. These are long-term, kind of a combination between an apartment and a hotel. And this is also the site where there is some environmental cleanup that needs to be done. And should I just bag this? Then traveling north is a Coast Guard auxiliary building, which we would intend to maintain and provide the possibility of some private commercial activity, but the requirement would be that the Coast Guard Auxiliary continue to be able to operate its safety, water safety programs. And should I just?
Do you have a screenshot?
Yeah, that's what
A screenshot tool. You're getting beyond my capacity. So, okay, and so then also the docks would something I can.
Yeah, you can go ahead and keep.
Okay. Sorry.
You can. Yeah.
How do you get the cars to go back and forth? And I can't get the
Yeah.
still arrow.
So they have like nobody on Seneca. How is that even possible? There's no traffic on Seneca.
was like a third of the amount going west is there.
Hmm.
Just pull up the snipping tool.
Yeah.
The snipping tool, right?
Right there.
There it is.
There.
Gotta go quick.
Really quick,
So Steve,
Got it.
how would you have done this on Zoom?
It's so much easier on Zoom in so many ways.
Just close it out.
That's all right, you can close that out now.
And then just go to the snipping tool.
Close that.
You should have taken a photo of it.
There it is.
All right. Do I still have an, okay, I don't have an arrow though. Okay. Do I have an, oh, there it is. No, but it doesn't operate on the screenshot, right? My cursor?
You got a little
Okay.
pointer there.
I'll just describe it. So the next building is the Coast Guard Auxiliary Building. It's owned by the state. We would propose acquiring it and that continue to allow the Coast Guard Auxiliary to be able to operate its classes and its safety and water safety classes. And the design, as you can see, together with the continued use of those docks,
allows greater waterfront access and visual access with the slots between the buildings. And then the docks that are currently used by the Coast Guard Auxiliary would be maintained, but as truly public. Right now, they are locked and closed and controlled by the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We would propose to make them actually open to the public. And because they are low, as they come down from the walkway, they are much more accessible than the wall is for kayaks, canoes, and person-powered boats, smaller boats. And also, by opening those up, you create a natural corridor of basically access and connection to the northern end, where off of the point we would add also a dock, which will also allow for more boating access, both people-powered and otherwise. And by making that circular pattern more accessible, we could bring it around the eastern side of the restaurant. And on the eastern side of the restaurant, we would bring the back south. I don't have a pointer, it's hard to describe, but right at the northern part of the Finger Lakes Boating Center long boathouse, we would open that up. I have a second slide if I can get to it, which shows what that access looks like. Oh, okay, thank you.
We'll see that in another slide.
Okay, we'll see that in another slide if we can get there.
Here's that dock that Steve was just talking about,
Yep.
a new dock, more access to the public.
Actually, I guess I could probably walk up there as well.
Is that contingent on the state
Both
selling
here and then a new dock.
No, there would be an open and public dock, and then the vertical components of the boathouse would be opened up again, and the shed area at the northern end would also be removed, so that again you are getting people closer to the water and increasing the visual and actual access. We would then people would then be able to travel westerly on that blue section, and then southerly back to the waterfront trail, and also access through to the flood control canal. And so,
I'm sorry, Steve. What
Yeah.
did you mean by the open end of the boat? How make it?
so the next slide, if we can, I don't know if we can get to it, I can show that to you. But part of our proposal is that at the north end, right now, it's got the hard aluminum siding that comes down, and then there's a shed area where boats park under it, and then the parking is kind of parallel in front of it. That shed area gets removed, the vertical component gets removed, the sidewalk gets brought closer to the water, and then you have the water right there you can see right through. So it opens it up. It opens up the visual access. And then the other component of the project is that the boating center is a critical access for boating in this area. And therefore, the hull and launch facility, which is at the south end of the boathouse, would be maintained, and also the ability to operate in conjunction of Finger Lakes Boating Center in conjunction with the rest of the development would be allowed in some configuration. It's not clearly shown there, but there's a general area at that end for the equipment to be able to operate. And so it is critical, and part of our project is that the existing businesses be able to continue to operate and to thrive. The other component of this is that the buildings that we have are less parking demand intensive, and that therefore the way we've designed it, with the parking increased at the northern end and at the southern end, it's therefore available to the other businesses, whether or not it's the Island Health, the dock, and other facilities that use the more southern end of the parking, and then at the northern end, There's also parking closer to the restaurant, the other demand uses. And from a planning point, the corridor or the straight line of the buildings also opens up areas along the water on the flood control side for more public access, whether or not it's, multitude of uses there. So we've also put this in context of another project, the Agora project, with the bridge that's shown down across the Inlet. And that really is aspirational, but we believe that the Inlet Island development should be in context of a larger, the entire waterfront.
And that would be a pedestrian or
Yes.
vehicular?
Pedestrian.
And if I could just add, this really is the beginning of a process of a layout schematically of some things that could happen on this. This isn't a fully developed site plan, far from it. It will require a lot of conversation with both, with the city and with this board.
And just to be clear, the IRA didn't evaluate the connections with Agora or any of those components. We only looked at the specifics of the stays and the, I forget the name of the anchor. Yeah.
And so that's kind of the 5-minute elevator speech on the project itself. It reflects a balance, and we believe it's a good balance of the competing needs that, and demands that are made on this small parcel. It is consistent with probably, 20-plus years of planning and the zoning and the comprehensive plan and the waterfront plan. It does not mean it's the only balance. And so what we are seeking is that you do pass this on to Common Council and eventually back to the IURA so that we can be in the position of the preferred developer and work through, all the issues, many of which have already been talked about. Thank you.
So, George, did you have a comment? I thought I saw you say something.
Oh.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
I just want to show that other slide that
Oh,
I
yeah.
mentioned.
We gotta go back to that. Close this one out
No, where's the mouse?
on your finger.
I know, but I can't see it.
The slide that's up on the screen is also in your packet on page 45. It doesn't have the arrows on it, but if you happen to have a computer, you can also look at a similar schematic of the proposal with some more additional detail actually added that links up the numbers and the letters on that plan.
I want to snip. What do I do on my
You don't want to
search
snip,
engine?
no. Okay, now double click on that and go to the second page.
All right, now if I can go real fast.
Slide it down, yeah. You're almost there. There we go.
There we go. So that shows, if you're looking at the voting center to the left, right now that's a solid wall. The idea would to be open it up. I did not mention in this project, a unique feature of this project is that it provides the capital to basically adaptively reuse the roof of the Finger Lakes Voting Center and do these improvements into a solar microgrid. I'm familiar with doing this, having done this at the 323 project. It makes it a net zero building, theoretically, if you can make the larger, the hotel building energy efficient by buying it solar, essentially, from this facility and also helping to improve this, this part of the project.
Thank you for the presentation, and we have the lead agency resolution, the environmental significance, and the resolution itself. So maybe we should go ahead and move the lead agency and the environmental review. Laura, you want to move that lead agency? Is there a second on the lead agency? Moved by Donna. So this is just Common Council declaring itself lead agency to conduct the environmental review. All those in favor? and that carries unanimously. And then the resolution on the environmental review, and that's an amended resolution, I believe, that was sent around. You had a concern about it, Laura. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but it was amended to just reflect that it's segmented. Thank you. So the key point is the first resolve, that the City of Ithaca Common Council as lead agency in this matter hereby determines that circumstances warrant a segmented review of the contingent property transfer from the other stages of the proposed urban renewal project, and that subsequent environmental review during the site plan review process will be no less protective of the environment. So is there a motion on that? Moved by Laura, seconded by Donna. Any discussion? Cynthia?
Could you explain the purpose of the segmentation?
Nels?
So this is, the action that's proposed is the conveyance of city-owned lands to the IRA for the purpose of structuring an urban renewal project that we would bring back to the Common Council for approval. So the action of the council is a way to authorize the agency to move forward to advance it to the next step. But you always have veto power essentially still. So the option is contingent upon Common Council approval. You know, we can't, the approval of the option to purchase a property would only be effective upon Common Council approval of the ultimate urban renewal project. So the environmental review is really focusing right now only on that transfer of ownership, but not the physical aspects of the project, because we don't really know enough of the details of the physical project. So if you approve this, we'll work with the developer. If we come to conclusion, they'll bring a project to the planning board for site plan approval. That'll be the full-fledged environmental review. Then we'll bring the project back to the Common Council for consideration.
Okay, got it.
So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And so then we have the resolution itself. And is there a motion on that, or do we want to discuss it first? I have no idea. 250? It's a long agenda. It's a 400-page agenda tonight.
It's page 8.
Oh, so 250 was a joke?
Yes, that was a joke. Sorry.
Yeah,
Didn't mean
that's
to
only
confuse
halfway
you.
through the agenda. Is
You're right. It is page 8, so
Page
that's a lot
8.
easier than I thought it would be. Yes. So we have so basically this is the action we're taking would be to transfer the city-owned properties to the IRA and establish, I mean, I could just read out the resolve if that helps. City of Ithaca Common Council hereby authorizes transfer of the following city-owned properties on Inlet Island to the Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency via an option agreement for the purpose of structuring a proposed property sale and development agreement with Finger Lakes Development LLC to undertake an urban renewal project subject to approval by Common Council, and then it lists the different tax parcels. Resolved that the purchase option agreement may only be exercised upon Common Council approval of an Inlet Island urban renewal project, be it further resolved that the mayor, subject to review by the city attorney, is authorized to implement this resolution. So that's the resolution. So essentially, if we vote on this, if council votes on this, we'll be going with Finger Lakes Development LLC as the preferred developer. Is that correct?
And you certainly, you're identifying that the scope of the project has the basis for a project you would expect you could approve. Because if we move to the next step, we're going to, at the agency, do appraisals and incur costs. The developer is going to incur 10 times as much cost, figure out the project. So we don't want to move forward if you have a strong discomfort with the scope of the project.
Right. So we're early in the process, and if we have a real objection to it, this is probably a good time to voice that before we get too far down the road.
I'm being told that you need to speak into your mic, Nels.
We can move it.
Sorry.
Or maybe it's not working.
It's stuck on the table up there, so I didn't know I should move it.
Okay.
I mean, maybe before moving it, it might make sense just to kind of go around the room and hear what people's initial reactions to this. Maybe that's the best thing. I can start, I guess. So some of the things I like about this, I like that INHS is involved. I like the affordable housing piece. I think we want to make sure that as we're developing the waterfront, that it's equitable from a housing standpoint. I like the pedestrian access that's included. I like the support for existing local businesses. I think that's also really important. Some of the issues I have with it, parking is always a concern that we're always going to have. I think the amount of surface parking on the waterfront is I think to try to mitigate that as much as possible. I also have a concern, it kind of seems to me, and like there's maybe a lack of like ground floor active uses in the project, and I think that's a big concern to me, just because I think it's really important that I think we all have a vision of what the waterfront could be. We have these canals that come through, and people could, on their kayak pull off and like go to a bar or restaurant or go to some, nice cafe or something. But I think in order to make that happen, you need to have attractions for people. You need to have options for people to come to the area. And one of my biggest concerns is that we're going to build this, and especially if there are no active uses on the ground floor, no retail options, there's not going to be a lot of reasons for people to visit the place. And the big one I think of is, I don't know if people have been behind like Cayuga Green, over by the creek walk area with 6 Mile Creek. It's kind of behind the lofts that were built a few years ago. If you go back there, a lot of money was poured into that area to make it look very nice and be attractive, and I think probably when people were conceiving it, they were thinking, oh, people are going to go back here because it's a nice space, there's green space, it's kind of a park-like area. But if you go back there, nobody really goes back there. Occasionally I walk through, but I'm always traveling somewhere else. It's not a great hangout spot, and the reason is that there isn't anything on the ground floor. It's all residential, and there's nothing to draw people back there. And I do have a concern about this proposal that especially a lot of the green space and kind of the park-like areas that have been proposed, which looks really good on paper, if there's not something to draw people there, nobody's going to go there, right? So I think that's probably a summary of just kind of my overall concerns. Laura?
Yeah, thank you. I like many of the same things you do. We know that workforce housing is needed, and I'm really pleased to see INHS partnering with the developer. I could imagine people living at the anchors who would be working at the hospital, in the schools, at the boating center, at Boatyard Grill, easy access to downtown. It just seems a perfect spot, and we know that INHS has a very good record of managing affordable workforce housing. So that really appeals to me. I do have similar concern about the level of parking, and I wonder if in the home-tel model, if you would be looking at some ground floor active use, because I had that concern too. I do see this site as being different from that which you described because of the boating center, the restaurants. There are other things that draw people to this area that wouldn't apply in the other area that you mentioned. But Steve, perhaps you could comment on your vision of the home-tel and any possible ground floor use?
We would certainly be open to it, and what while we had not envisioned a separate one at this point, it's certainly something we would consider as the space allows. We do envision right next door the Coast Guard Auxiliary could have some commercial use, and also with the open spaces, mindful of the fact that the DEC, that easement, the 25-foot easement, there can be no obstructions in that easement. And so we've allowed space for the setup of things as to whether or not, it's fairly seasonal. In the cold, in the winter, there's not a lot of people anywhere down there. But some, seasonal, whether or not it's food trucks or, there's space to be. I've thought of, the book vendors in Paris and that sort of thing, if we could engender that. And don't forget, you also do have the activity of the flood control channel. You've got the boats there, you've got crew races. And so you do have a draw of people being able to watch those. And, the canoes and the kayak access through the dock. But sure, I mean, be glad to have some commercial space. It is, and, you know, we've got the, you know, inside the Finger Lakes Boating Center on the other side, we've got the boat shop, we have, you know, we sell bait, we have a fish, you know, we're doing fishing, we rent kayaks. So there are people and there are creating places to go down there, in addition to, I don't mean kayaks, we rent pontoons, pontoon boats and other boats, and then you have the Boatyard Grill. So we have that activity. But in the building itself, I think that's, you know, certainly could be possible.
Cynthia?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I think that I would like to see that fleshed out a bit more. Not, you know, opportunities for job creation and job development is important. And seeing this as a recreational space, I recognize a lot of the focus seems to support the existing buildings there. So making sure that there would be opportunities for new job opportunities, new business opportunities, and recreational opportunities, whether they be dining or retail, and how would that be incorporated into the model that's presented. I'm noticing that the proposal seems to visualize, and as you've just mentioned, use of the Coast Guard auxiliary site, which is not listed as one of the parcels included here, nor is that parcel that is associated with the parking adjacent to the Boatyard Grill is not listed. So I'm not sure where we are with that and how that's being included in this discussion if it's not part of this transaction. I'm also would like to know more. I believe that there is, as part of the decision, was a sharing of costs with regards to the environmental cleanup. And as we talk about segmentation and so on, that's something I'd like to know more about. What will that actually cost? When those studies were done over 15 years ago, not only have costs gone up dramatically, the parameters of what the DEC tests for in soil and contamination have changed quite a bit. So getting a better understanding of what that obligation would be on the part of the city in terms of this transaction, I think would be important.
Nels?
Just comment on a few of those things. The cleanup approach is that the developer would take the responsibility for the cleanup, but the cost would be deducted from the fair market value of the lands they purchase. So they would have the responsibility to do the cleanup, but it would basically come out of the purchase price. We've got about a half acre of land that is pretty significantly contaminated from former bulk fuel storage on the site. It's similar to what was done for the Boatyard Grill project. I think that was about a $350,000 to $400,000 cleanup around circa 2000. So we're probably closer to $700,000 as a starting point maybe for the cleanup going forward. And that's on city-owned land. So that's a site that would need to be remediated to move the project forward. As it relates to the parcels you mentioned, Cynthia, I think the intent is to have the resolution include the city-owned parcels that are in Inlet Island. The Coast Guard auxiliary property is not owned by the city. It may be acquired by the city. We've had years of negotiation to acquire that parcel, and it would be proposed that the city would acquire that and sell it at the same price to the developer, so it would be a pass-through to facilitate the project. But I believe that the resolution does list that parcel as one of the proposed projects to be conveyed.
You're correct.
Subject to IRA approval. I mean,
Right.
subject to acquisition from the state.
All right, thank you.
Other thoughts? Donna?
What I like about this proposal is that it does build itself, well, not build itself, it does accommodate the Coast Guard facility as is and leaves that as an active Coast Guard facility. Also, the boating center is supported, as well as the space needed for that. I like the affordable housing. I very much like the idea of the hotel. I think there's a huge need for that. I'm curious about how it would be regulated, since it's neither a hotel nor an apartment, but that's a trivial point. I had asked in one of the Zoom meetings, what benefit, aside from increasing the tax base, what benefit these projects would be to residents of the city. And Seth put it better. He said, what would be the draw for, if you don't live there, what would be the draw of going there, using this space? He articulated the question well. So I think if there's some potential for incorporating useful retail space or another restaurant or something that would draw local people, not necessarily tourists, to the space, that would be of benefit to city residents, I think that would be great. But I already think it has a lot. The proposal already has some attractive features.
Sorry, Laura, and then George.
Thank you. We have heard concerns, questions about the size of buildings, the height of buildings. These soils are challenging, as they are in a number of areas in the city that are currently being developed. And I wonder if you could comment on the possibility of reducing somewhat the size. I mean, right now, the anchor and the stays are both projected at 5-story. And so my question is whether it is possible or what it would take. And I see that Joe is here from INHS. Perhaps he could comment because, you know, I wouldn't put you on the spot for INHS, but there have been concerns and questions about the size of buildings. So what possibility is there for reducing the size somewhat, even though the zoning allows 5 stories?
Right. So it's hard to quantify that possibility, you know, kind of in the abstract. It certainly exists. It's a matter of achieving a balance between financial feasibility and size. So in other words, the size is generated by the demands that are placed upon the building. If we're going to pay for the cleanup, pay for the property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then that, and also the foundations, then there has to be a give and a take. And this balance, I mean, this is a balance. Could there be a different balance? Absolutely. But for example, paying for the real estate, you know, there may have to be some compromises with respect to that, or what other demands that may be placed upon the project by the city. The municipal improvements, things like that. So I'd be happy, in order to be able to answer that question, we need to be in the position to be able to negotiate. And as Nella said, we're going to come back to the planning board in order to approve that. And my guess is, and we talked about it briefly, there may be some interim, meetings with the planning board. This may have been done in the past before, because I don't want to put forth a project and get approval only to have common council say nay. And then Joe is here if they also have demands on, financial demands, I think, on the size and the minimum size that they could go to, or reduce size.
Yeah, I mean, our constraints are similar to any developer in terms of what does it cost to purchase the property, what does it cost to build the building. We've definitely done projects that are smaller in size. Stone Quarry was 35 units, Cedar Creek was 39 units. Breckenridge is 50. We're sort of modeling this on Breckenridge because of the size of the site, and 50 units feels like it's not too large. Our opinion of how to develop affordable housing is to sort of spread it around the city in sort of smaller, what we consider smaller buildings, and I think 30 to 50 units is what we would consider small to mid-size. But at the end of the day, we would take all of this into consideration in determining, can we do 35 units? What does it cost to build? And can we get the financing put together for it? So that's not sort of a very specific answer, but I think I'm sort of saying the same thing as Steve, is we kind of have to get into it to figure that out. But we would certainly look at it. If that was, the direction that everybody wanted to go, a much smaller project, we'd look at it and honestly see if it was possible.
Did you have a comment?
I'm less concerned. I'm less concerned with the size as much, and for me, especially looking at the pictures on that site, these seem like really reasonably sized buildings, especially because we're going to be getting so much housing there, and we all know that's a persistent crisis in the community. So, I'm not as concerned with it again because it's not. The massing just really isn't that dramatic, and if we can create more affordable housing that's in such a nice location, I feel like we should do that. We should give people in our community a nice affordable place to live right here on the water, with so many nice amenities around it.
Yeah, I'll second that. It's kind of how I feel about it. And INHS has done several projects now in the city, and I think everybody can look at these projects and see that they do a really good job, and it's a nice design. And Breckenridge is a beautiful building. So I was really excited to see that you're involved with this project, and I think this is a great spot for affordable housing.
Thank you.
George, did you have a comment?
Thanks. So, 2008 was the first Common Council meeting I ever went to, and it was about the project in 2008, and the vote was really close, and it was actually a weird night, and that project, which was a hotel, was defeated, and so everybody who says, "Geez, I wish McGonigal wasn't here," it's your fault. There are a number of things I like about this. I like the fact that Steve is a townie who loves the waterfront, and there's several aspects of this project that confirm that. I think what we need to remember is that Inlet Island is kind of the main street, commercial main street of the West End now. Johnson Boatyard is no longer there. We need waterfront uses on our waterfront. I think that's very important. I also like the fact that INHS is involved and that there would be affordable housing here. Unlike Steve and my friend Seth, I think it's too big, but I'm glad INHS is involved. I have confidence that their skill in finding different funding sources, they would find a way to source funds for a smaller project. The Hometel is, I don't know about that yet. I could be convinced, but one thing I do think this project lacks, and I agree with Seth and with Donna, is more small businesses. Now, I don't know how you have a second restaurant to compete with your existing restaurant, but I think Inlet Island needs at least another restaurant, a bar restaurant, and I like the idea of actually people being able to sit, get their stuff at the restaurant and sit out on the patio and look at the flood control channel, look at the boat races, etc. And of course, we can't forget that this is the first stop, potentially the first stop after you've been at Cass Park. And that's why this site or somewhere on Taconic Boulevard is in desperate need of an ice cream stand. I'm serious, because that was a charming aspect of the Scoop. Kids coming back from playing whatever sport they're playing can stop and have an ice cream. And if there's another, perhaps more modestly priced restaurant, people can stop off for tofu burger or whatever they want to eat. So I think this, and the other thing I'm wondering about, because we're talking about small businesses, is it possible to sell some of these parcels, but not all of them, and keep some of the parcels under city control for one of these other options?
Cynthia?
Yeah, I guess I am also looking for other options. The proposal, I appreciate it for all the reasons that have been mentioned, but it lacks, there's so many benefits of Inlet Island. It's such an asset. There's so much that could be done there. The potential is amazing. And it lacks the imagination to take advantage of that potential. And that's what seems such a missed opportunity if we proceed with this as it's being proposed. It doesn't take advantage of the view sheds. The units don't even face the lake. They face the cliff and the bridge and the traffic. I think that there's it could just go a little bit farther to satisfy and exemplify all the wonderful things that we have here in Ithaca, and how to bring this forward to the people who live here and those who are visiting. I think this is a fantastic opportunity, and I think with a little bit more work, we could get there. So whether or not it's splitting the property so that we maintain control, so that another person can come up with an idea for it, or going back to the drawing board and seeing what other options available, I would be interested in either of those two. And I will also say that there's a tremendous amount of development and traffic fatigue that residents feel. And to go through this process and bring forward this city directed project, and I think there needs to be significant value that we are presenting to our community to say that this is worth it. It's almost there, but it's not there yet.
George?
One additional thing. Another thing I like about this project revolves around parking, and the fact that these parking lots can be used, at least the one on the south end, for two different clienteles, a daytime clientele and an evening clientele. So you get twice as much use out of this parking area as you would if everybody parked there all day. But just hearkening back to our conversation about traffic on the west end, to me that's another cautionary note about not making our developments too large. Because not only does this all end up at the corner of Buffalo and Taconic, but it also has to get out onto Taconic Boulevard from that little appendix, and that can be problematic now. So that's another reason, another argument to maybe scale it back a little.
Steve, did you have a comment?
Yeah, something George said. I just want to point out that it's the trends of the last 50 years have gotten us where we are on traffic. It's a lot of suburban sprawl, and it's not like the folks who are clogging the streets are very typically not there's a good portion of them who are headed to West Hill as their destination, but there are a lot of them who are headed outside of our city, and not having enough housing in the city and enough ways to get around the city absent a car is what's gotten us here. And we do need more development in the city to create more places for people to live, where they work and play, and those are the things that will get us away from car-centric culture and away from clogging our streets with vehicles.
Chris.
Yeah, just another thing that the IRA considered, because we knew parking and traffic were going to be an issue, is the more there's transient uses in this development, the more you're likely to increase traffic and increase demands on parking. And so this project, we felt like kind of found the right mix of having less demand but not no demand. Division probably had the least amount of demand, and Waterfront Alchemy had the most. And so I think there's a lot of creative ideas here tonight around other uses, and that's up for Steve to sort of consider about how he incorporates them. But keep in mind that the more the use is transient, the more you're going to increase traffic and parking demands on Inlet Island.
I just wanted to bring it back because we do have to make a decision soon and kind of move forward in this, but I just wanted to clarify that, what we're doing tonight is not really choosing a project, because as Steve was saying, this is going to go through a lengthy negotiation, and I imagine this is going to change quite a bit. And, we've heard all kinds of suggestions tonight. I mean, what we're really doing tonight is choosing a developer and a team to partner with who we believe can eventually get us to the point where we have the project that we want. So I just wanted to clarify that, because ultimately that's what we're voting on tonight, is whether to go with Finger Lakes Development as a developer. And the other caveat I would just say, and this is really to the team, is that the council is going to change in 5 months quite a bit, because you have 4 members who are leaving and there are new folks coming in. So just knowing that it's, this group and what we say and what we agree to might not be what somebody a year from now agrees to. Just throwing that out there. But that said, I think I'm comfortable moving forward with this resolution tonight, especially based on, the experience and prior projects that you've done in the city. I have faith that we can negotiate and get to a point where this council at least would hopefully be satisfied, and our constituents would be satisfied. So I'd be willing to move this on tonight. With that, maybe I see some nodding. So is there a motion on it? Is that a motion? Moved by Steve. Is there a second? Seconded by Donna. Any further discussion? Cynthia.
Just for clarification, and I think Chris said this. He said the transfer shows support for the proposal and the development of the parcel. I wrote it down because I thought that was important. That this gives a green light to the developer based on our discussion or based on the proposal that is being supported here to proceed with the investment that would get them through site plan review. So I think if there are aspects that you want to change to this, now is the time to include that as a direction, because I don't believe there's going to be a conversation with council to flush this out further to say what you're looking for. Am I understanding this correctly?
I think that's the correct way of thinking about it, yes.
Right, so it's not a matter of, like we're going to be working with the developer to come up with the proposal we all agree with. I think we need to decide if we agree with this now and then vote to move it forward. That was the understanding that I got in the conversations with Chris, and definitely what I heard today.
So I saw Nels and then Chris.
Okay, and then what I've been saying is that this forms the basis for a project that you could approve.
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be changes as it goes along, and they've heard the comments and try to incorporate those that are feasible, but not all of them are going to be feasible.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are going to work out and some aren't. So the question is, does this have the framework or the foundation for a project you could see would be approvable with the concepts you see here, probably adjusted by trying to incorporate the issues you've raised.
Laura? Oh, sorry. Chris, did you have a comment?
I was going to largely say the same thing. I mean, I basically agree with Cynthia's kind of high-level assessment there, but paired with what you're saying, Seth, which is like, yeah, you're approving the team. You're not approving this project. This project is not a project right now. So if you said any of the elements that are in here you really don't want to see, or there's an element you really want to see and you're not going to approve it one way or the other, that's useful feedback. But to Nels's point, like, yeah, there's going to be, some of those things may or may not be able to be integrated. So, you know, this is like, I would say this is a container. You look at this project as a container, right? And if there's a big part of the container you don't like, now's the time to say you don't like it.
Laura?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think that's helpful. And the container will be discussed, if this is moved forward, the container will be discussed at Common Council in August, right, with our full complement of colleagues.
I have one last question. I want to go back to a point that George made about splitting off the parcels, and I don't know how feasible that is or what the financials that are involved with that, but is there an option to do that as part of the negotiation that the IURA is going to be doing with the developer? Or is if we vote on this resolution tonight, is it these parcels are getting transferred?
I think it definitely adds a major complication because we're trying to expand public access, shared parking, clean up a brownfield site. I mean, I'm sure Steve would be happy to say, well, maybe I'll give up part of that brownfield site and make that available. It really does hold together better as a package. It's not that large of a site to begin with. So, you know, a little under 3 acres total. So I think it would be very difficult to split it up. This is different from the Green Street Garage project in that the Common Council identified the aspects you wanted in the project, the major components. In this case, it's open to the developers to come forward with the framework of the waterfront plan being kind of a driver and the existing uses of the island and opportunities. So it's a little different process here, and that you know, we weren't able to get a clear. I think we would ask you what you want from scratch. It would have been difficult to come up with exactly what you wanted because you wouldn't, you know, the developers brought forward things they thought were feasible and also beneficial, and I think that was hopeful. But I think this is a different process, and it leaves that final definition of the project a little more in flux. And that's, I mean, and because we did this kind of lighter approach as schematic, we can't bring forward and tell you what things are really feasible necessarily until we go into a deeper dive on it.
Right. Cynthia, and then we do have to make a decision on it.
So in which case, because I'm always loath to try to do things on the floor of council, I'd like to suggest something that I mentioned by email. Could we approve to circulate this, give council and members of the community, who many of which, you know, because this was with the IURA and had not been selected, the public will have the first time to really delve into this one project and provide feedback on aspects of it that they support or would like to see amended in a different way. Could we approve to circulate, encourage council members to provide feedback, community to provide feedback? Therefore, we could incorporate into this resolution, similar to the Green Street Garage, what exactly it is that we're looking for, and then move that on to council rather than leaving just basically it as is and trying to do this on the floor of council.
I mean,
My only cautionary note is that since this isn't the final design, people will pick it apart as a design, and it won't be very productive. The concept, I think, is worthy of circulation, and maybe a narrative is better than the drawing itself. And I think we did fall into this trap, 10 years ago, when a concept drawing was proposed, and everyone just went nuts. But it really wasn't reality. It was just a concept. So that's my only concern with that.
Oh, if there's sorry, may I?
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a way, then if you could outline how we would have that feedback, when it would be appropriate, does it go to the planning board, does it go to council, you know, so that we could clearly understand what the community involvement as well as council involvement would be, to make sure that we could come up with a design that would actually be successful.
Yeah, well, it certainly would be distributed widely, including Common Council. But I think it needs a green light to go forward to start to develop those plans more fully And we can certainly commit to working with council as plans progress.
So if we were to circulate it, do you have a sense of like the best format to circulate it in? Because you're just saying like it wouldn't be good to necessarily send out like a drawing, but maybe like a narrative.
Well, the narrative is pretty thorough. And I think that we could, I don't know that I would do it community-wide, but I think we certainly could do it to a select group of people, council, all of council being one, but they already got this. All of council did. I have to think about it a little bit.
So thoughts on that? I mean, do we want to circulate it and bring it back to PDC, or are we comfortable to move on to council tonight? Just curious to hear thoughts. Yep. Laura?
I'm comfortable moving it on to council. I will note that at least one, and your recollection may be better than mine, but at least one of the IURA meetings, there were a number of common council members who heard the presentation. So I am comfortable that there has been some information already shared. I take Joanne's point that this is conceptual at this stage, but I'm comfortable moving this on to council.
You as well? Okay. All right. That said, so are we ready to vote? So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of moving this on to council? All opposed? And that carries 4-1. Thank you. So that will go to the August council meeting.
Thank you.
Next up is the resolution to release the city easement across 401 East MLK Street. Is Lisa here for that one? Or is this? Oh, yes, she's here.
She's here. Yep.
I gotta dig through my agenda and find where we are. So I believe we have a resolution in the packet, right? Yeah, it's just sandwiched between historic district materials and
Yes.
and Carpenter Park materials. Do you maybe want to just summarize this and explain why we're taking this action while I find it?
You have this drawing in your packet.
Oh, you think?
There are two easements on the property. This is 401 East State Street, the gate, what many people call the gateway property, is currently in development. Being proposed for that property, there is a 5-foot wide pedestrian easement going down the edge of the property. It doesn't even go all the way to State Street, and it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. And then there's a drainage easement on the property, and then there's an easement along the trail. As you know, there's a trail, a publicly accessible trail through 2/3 of the property. So the drainage easement needs to be relocated because it needs to be relocated, and this is the new alignment for that. And the proposal is to extinguish this pedestrian easement because it's not in the right place and it's not wide enough. And the resolution that Corinne prepared, the proposal is that this is extinguished, and because the applicant is proposing pretty significant pedestrian amenities on the site, that would be, they don't need to pay for the easement being extinguished. It's there because the city is getting a lot back. So what they're getting back is, the Gateway Trail goes about 2/3 of the way down the property. So they will be extending it to the end of the property, same design, same railing, repairing of the creek wall. And then in addition to that, they will be extending, it's not on this drawing, but they will be extending a trail into public property adjacent to the end of this property, into Sycamore Creek, about 150 feet. It hasn't been designed, but it will be an accessible trail to the water's edge or near the water's edge.
Mm-hmm.
And also they're providing another pedestrian access, which is this blue one, from State Street through this proposed monument down to the creek. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this resolution? Moved by Donna, seconded by Cynthia. Any discussion? Cynthia?
Thank you. Could you describe, on the map, it indicates a 19-foot by 19-foot easement for pedestrian bridge. Could you clarify what that is?
I'm sorry.
It looks like a little square on your drawing. And
Oh, okay. So that is an entrance to the new building, and it will be it will touch city property, so there'll have to be an easement over it. So the building is, there's
like a
huge
skywalk or
retaining wall
something.
that's currently being constructed. If you haven't been over there, you should go look. It's fascinating. And then there'll be a gap between the new building and the retaining wall, so there'll be a bridge over it from State Street to the building.
Right. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Donna?
So there's going to be There's going to be pedestrian access from State Street into the property over onto the creek.
Yes.
Okay. And this is totally irrelevant, but we've been talking about traffic so much this evening. I can't believe there's not going to be a traffic problem with this development. It's already horrible trying to negotiate a vehicle in and out of that Gateway, former Ithaca Coffee Company, little plaza. I think we haven't heard the last of that.
Any other comments? So, ready to vote? All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thanks, Lisa.
We agreed that.
Yeah.
It's also the first word.
Next is the proposed Dryden, this is the Dryden Road parking garage mural by, and I'm sorry if I get this name right, it's Yurka Abuva. It's in solidarity with the Asian Pacific Islander Desi American community. And there's a resolution in the packet as well as a memo from Megan and a lovely picture of the mural, which looks great. And looks like this is going to be a great spot for it. Anyways, those are my thoughts.
It will also be, it's proposed to be at a pre-approved location by the Board of Public Works. So we would take it to the Community Life Commission, but they're not currently meeting. And these students would love to get started on this. So, and I would like to see it get started before we have snow.
Does somebody want to move that? Moved, wow, okay. Moved by Steve, seconded by Laura. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't want to jump the gun.
So, I mean, I think it's a wonderful idea. I would love to see a mural or some art installation recognizing and honoring all of those who have passed as a result of COVID. So I really support the intent that was laid out in the description here. I am a little hesitant to support this for several reasons. Typically, when we memorialize an individual and show their face, there are individuals who are known in the community, who have been a part of the community, and I don't want to say warranted, but because of their dedication, either historically, nationwide, or locally, there is an attribution as to why they are being honored in this way and having their image on city property. And in that sense, I am hesitant to have an image of an individual that is not tied to the community. I think it'll be confusing. Who is this person? Is there a description? Why? What is it that merits this individual or these two individuals? In addition to that, I recognizing as part of the description the reference to the Kazakh community. The Kazakh community's predominantly Muslim. The Muslim culture and religion is very reticent to portray human figures in art form. Typically, they are highly stylized to not be distinguished because the presentation of a human figure is perceived to be a form of idolatry. which is in general not supported in the Muslim culture. So there are certain aspects to this that give me great pause. So I'm reluctant actually to support it, although I really do support the intent. Just uncertain as to what the city's perspective is in terms of portraying images of individuals on city property.
Sure.
I see your point, and I know that we, in the past, have been very concerned about memorializing anyone, because we could have this everywhere, memorials. But and as far as the portrayal of an actual image, I'm not as familiar with that as you, but I will say that we do have lots and lots of murals throughout the city that of images that don't necessarily reflect anyone that we know. I mean, you just sent me the Black Alchemy proposal with many, many images. I don't think there's any likenesses of a local person in the many, many murals we have. So that would be my only comment on that.
It wasn't my proposal that I was supporting, but I was sharing.
Well, you're sharing, but
I was sharing what somebody is offering.
The point was
Right,
that there's
right.
lots of images throughout the city in the murals. But we could take this back and see if...
I mean, I also just point out that, from the project description, I mean, this is a really personal painting. I mean, it's a rendition of the artist's grandmother and best friend's grandfather, both of whom died from COVID. And so I think just from that standpoint, I mean, this is a personal expression of an individual artist. If there are issues that people have with it, with the mural, like with any piece of art, I suppose that they could take it up with the artist. But I think, I think in general, we're doing what the public art program is meant to do, which is to allow individuals to come forward and express themselves. Donna?
Yeah, I just think it's very sweet that this young woman is a Cornell student, and she somehow learned about our public art program and had an idea to honor her grandmother, whom I'm sure she misses, and the grandfather, and I just thought it was a very sweet story. And it can only make the garage look better.
So we're ready to vote? All in favor? All opposed? And that carries 4-1. Next up is the Ithaca Housing Authority, the North Side Part 5A. So is the Ithaca Housing Authority team here? Yes, okay.
Waiting patiently,
Waiting
Lindsay
patiently,
Hendricks.
yes. Do you want to come forward maybe?
Sure, I can.
That's okay. There might be some questions about this, so I'm wondering. So, and correct me if I get anything wrong on this, but just to kind of briefly summarize, this is conveying the North Side Apartments, Overlook Terrace, and Southview Gardens, which currently is public housing, a federally supported public housing, to a new sort of development corporation that's more in line with what, as I understand it, kind of like what INHS does, so that there's access to private, different sources of funding in order to maintain the properties.
Yeah.
If I've said anything crazy, then.
No, essentially, it's Section 58B of the Public Housing Law requires a housing authority to get permission from the legislative body to transfer a property over. So that's essentially what this resolution is doing. We are pretty close to getting the project finally moving forward, so we are asking permission for the housing authority to be able to convey it to a non-for-profit entity that it's Cayuga Housing Development Corporation, which is the non-for-profit partner of Ithaca Housing Authority. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. They will start a housing development fund company, and that will essentially be the owner for purposes of the project.
And if I could just clarify, this procedure is in order to get the funds released. It's one of the necessary steps.
Yes, correct.
Donna?
Didn't we do this a few years ago with something very similar? Where, was it
I
the
don't think so.
scattered sites or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's different.
Oh,
This is very specific to housing authorities because it's because of the legislative body's involvement in housing authorities.
so have we done this for the housing authority before?
No, this is the housing authority's first low-income housing tax credit project.
Okay.
So is this part of the RAD conversion?
Correct.
That's going
yes,
on?
Yeah,
Right.
that's exact. The RAD and Section 18. Section 18 will be for North Side, which is what is allowing it to be demolished and newly constructed, and then the other two will be under RAD.
So-
Those are the south side apartments that are owned.
Yep, Southview,
thank you.
Overlook.
And
will-
then Overlook.
Yep, so Southview and Overlook will be substantially rehabilitated, and they will run through the RAD program. And North Side apartments will be under Section 18, allowing it to be demolished and newly constructed. That I know we've all gone over. I think you're very familiar with that part of it, but the other two properties are also involved in that. It's just because it's not a new construction project, it's not nearly as substantial.
Why is Titus Towers not included?
Well, that just wasn't part of this proposed project. It's also in a different AMP, so generally we would, though Titus Towers would probably be a completely separate project, but that's not.
But it's going to go through the same process of going through the conversion.
It would, if it were ever to be something that that the housing authority was interested in, it would be the same process.
Mhm. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks. I am in favor of this. I do have a couple of questions, one of which might be just a simple typo. In the second whereas, it says the property is presently improved by approximately 106 residential units. Is that word improved?
How many residential units? Oh, 106.
106, but
It's the wording of the resolution?
yeah, that word improved,
I think that, yeah, I'm not a lawyer.
I'm not either.
Yeah, and this was prepared by an attorney.
It was.
I think that just means
She
it's not an
is
empty lot.
presently
It's
improved.
got
Okay.
property, it's got
Yes,
stuff
yeah,
on it.
correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And then my better question perhaps, in that same whereas, which I now understand better, it indicates that the residential units are for, excuse me, for low and very low income persons. And on the next page, it indicates that there will be an addition of 12 units to the total, so a total bringing it up to 118 unit housing project for persons of low income at the property. Do you anticipate any difference in the population being served? Will it still be serving low and very low income people?
Yes, it will. Anybody residing at North Side will be at 60% area median income or below.
60% or below?
Correct. Those who are at Southview and Overlook, if there are any who are above that income, they have a right to return, so they will be able to remain. So there may be some tenants at Southview or Overlook who are above that area median income, but that's because they're currently residents there, and they have a right to return to the property regardless of their current income level.
So that was going to be my next question, was to and I've exchanged several emails with Brenda Westfall about this already, but I just think it would be good to just talk about it publicly. Like, what is the plan to ensure that people who are currently living there can continue to live there? And then also, what is the plan, the relocation? Because obviously this is going to be extremely disruptive to people's lives. They're going to have to move out of this, and as the building gets demolished, and then it's going to be a new building. So what's the plan to allow the people who currently live there to stay there? And what's the plan to relocate people?
So I actually started relocation meetings today. I attended my first one with the tenants. So personally, I'm meeting face-to-face with every household. And we work with them to help them with the relocation during this process. Tenants who reside at Southview and Overlook, regardless of their income, will be able to return if that's what they want. So it would be temporary relocation. North side is a little different. Any tenants who are above 60% area median income will not be income qualified to return because it's under Section 18 versus the RAD program. Any of those tenants, I'm still working with them to help them permanently relocate to new housing.
How many is that?
I think there are currently about, the last time I checked, I believe there were about 6. I think there were 6 households the last time I checked. Now, it is also based on income at the time, at the time the property opens. So North Side will not be newly constructed for another two years or so. There are some tenants that are just barely over, is that me? Okay. There are some tenant household incomes that are just barely over that 60% mark. So there is a possibility that some may come below that. Some have already come below who were there before, who were above the level before. However, there was COVID, so we take that into account. It's possible that their income decreased between previously and now due to COVID, so that might go back up. But there are about 6 households currently that are above 60% area median income.
So everybody below 60 and below has a right, not automatic right to return, but the ones above.
They don't have an automatic right to return, but we are giving them a priority to return if they choose to reapply.
But then.
They don't, they.
Sorry, just, yeah, go on.
RAD, the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program gives an absolute right of return. Section 18 does not. But the Housing Authority values the tenants who are there. So anybody who is income eligible, which for this project would be 60% area median income or below, will be given a priority to return if they choose. They just have to apply and they will automatically be given a priority to return to the property.
But that can't, for the 6 households or whatever you said that were above 60%, that they're not going to have the same
That's
priority
correct.
status.
Well, they will not be able to return.
Just will not be able to return
Correct.
because it's only 60% or below.
Yes. But they will be, I will be working with them to provide, to help them find appropriate housing.
And sorry, just one last question. When they're displaced, where do they go? And who pays for their?
We pay, the Housing Authority will be paying for their moving expenses. And then,
And do they just move into like private? Is it still subsidized? Will they still be housed in subsidized housing?
It really depends on their preferences and their, that's why I meet with them. So I meet with them to find out what their personal preferences are. Neighborhoods, they get a tenant protection voucher, those who income qualify, so they can actually, I spoke to somebody the other day that's considering relocating back to their original home in New York City because they could not have a Section 8 voucher before. So it's possible that some people may choose to move to an area that's actually more what they want. So, but it's really based on their personal preferences. We work with them closely to find it may be another, it could be another INHS has a property opening soon. Some may decide that they want to go there. Others could want a private landlord situation. Some may want to rent a house. It really depends on the household and what they're looking for and what they want.
I'm sorry, one last question. I'm sorry. Do you have a sense, is there enough availability of housing within, because this is, North Side is very centrally located. It's downtown. It's close to amenities, close to jobs, schools. Do you have a sense that there's enough available housing in the city so that when people are displaced, are they going to be able to find, I assume a lot of people are in Section 8. Are they going to be able to find landlords who take Section 8? Are they going to, that would be my concern, because that somebody might end up in Groton, for instance, when they've been used to like living downtown, and I could see that being a very big disruption in someone's life.
That is why we are starting it so early. That's why I've started meeting with them. We cannot actually close this project until everybody at Northside has been relocated. They have to be relocated, safely relocated first. Because the entire property is being demolished, we cannot have one tenant remaining before we even close. So that's something that we're starting now, so that to avoid that from happening. Because I agree with you, it's I heard other affordable housing projects being discussed here because there is it's difficult. It certainly is going to be challenging, but we're taking the time ahead of time to help people individually, so that when the time comes to start this, we're prepared to do that, and everybody's been safely relocated. Currently, we're only focusing on Northside first, because that property will start first, and we'll actually start the other ones later, and the others are much smaller. But it will be challenging, but we'll work through it with them, and we're confident that we will find enough. The first family I met with today, they're actually interested in living outside of the city because they have a family member that lives there. We don't know until we meet with every family, but we will work closely with them to help them, relocate to a place that they're comfortable with and that they're happy with.
Laura, did you have a?
You asked my question.
Okay.
If I may, thank you. Your last comment reminded me of something. I would hope that we would not see displacement and a relocation of residents who currently live in the city, very low income residents who currently live in the city. I'm hoping that we don't see a displacement of them to outside the city.
That is not the goal, unless that's what they would prefer. That's certainly not the goal.
And it may be in the document, so I apologize if I'm overlooking it, but how long then is the process, the demolition and the rebuilding? And you're going to be doing it in phases, right?
So total, 32 months will be for all three properties. We believe that Northside will take about that full 32 months, probably maybe approximately and these are approximates, but approximately 4 to 6 months for demolition. And we will, the current plan is to construct about 50% of Northside first, open that so that tenants some are able to come back, and other new tenants, if depending on how many decide to come back to Northside of the former tenants, come in, and then we will finish the second half. Overlook will be second, and we will start that either when demolition is completed at Northside or about when it's about completed. And then we believe that will take about 6 to 9 months there's only 10 units there, so that should be pretty quick, and it's a moderate rehabilitation. And then when Overlook is completely finished and the tenants have returned, we will start at Southview. And we anticipate Southview taking about a year. So actually, even though Northside is starting first, Overlook and Southview are anticipated to be completed before all of Northside is completed.
I don't think we've actually moved and seconded this. So if there's a motion, Cynthia, moved by Cynthia, seconded by Steve. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thanks, and we'll see you at the August council meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Last but not least, the East Hill Historic District expansion. Thank you for waiting patiently, Brian. So I believe we said that we would maybe just start with the discussion and Q&A and then refer. There's an online presentation.
There
right?
is two, I think, at this point. The ILPC meeting had an initial presentation in April, I believe, and then another one in May. Christina O'Malley at Historic Ithaca, who prepared many of the materials that inundated you with this month.
It's like you wrote a novel.
Prepared. So yeah, I can share a link to those YouTube videos after the meeting.
Okay. So with that, maybe I guess maybe we could start with. This is just to circulate tonight, so we're just going to circulate it and get more feedback and come back next month. But maybe we could just hear kind of initial reactions. I had the opportunity to take a tour of the district with Brian and Duxon, and I was impressed with Brian's knowledge of the history behind each of the properties, as you can see in the agenda packet. And it's like several of those. I was even surprised that a few of those weren't protected, just because I've noticed them and I've assumed that they must have been, that they're on the register or whatever. But so in general, I think that the expansion made sense to me based on what I learned on the tour. So this is something I could see myself supporting. But curious to hear from others. Donna.
I will funnel a question that has come to me, and that is, what's the advantage, or what's the rationale rather, for including all 19 properties in this district rather than simply landmarking or designating some of the notable or clearly significant properties in there? I mean, because some of the 19 really aren't all that special. So what's the point of making this district instead of just landmarking some of the houses in this area?
The argument there is the concentration of the number. I would agree with you. There are some buildings within the expansion area that are not spectacular. I can think of two. But overall, all of the majority of the 19 properties, I would say all of them to some extent have or meet the criteria for local designation. They're associated with significant people. They're incredible examples of their architectural style. They're associated with prominent local architects. Those are, a few of the criteria that we use. So, with so many properties that have or are in one geographic area that meet that criteria, it makes the most sense to include them within existing historic district or create a separate historic district to include them, to protect them, because they do, while they are individually significant, many of them, they have a greater impact as a grouping as well.
Steve.
Talk about the ones specifically in Linden Avenue.
Oh, on Lynn?
I'm sorry, I misread that one. You're good.
Okay. I jumped to College Town. It was an amazing feat.
Linden Avenue. Right.
I don't think this is East Hill.
Yeah.
It's well, and that has been a lot of the questions that I've received. Is there's a debate? Is this East Hill or is this part of downtown and DeWitt?
Yeah.
So, but then what is the dividing line between East Hill? And our neighborhoods are so amorphous. They change depending on who you talk to. What is East Hill? What is downtown? What is Bell Sherman? What is Fall Creek? So, it's really just, I think, defining a geographic marker as the division line between downtown and something that's set like a street rather than an arbitrary line between a block, and setting that as the boundary for East Hill.
Are we okay with circulating this? Is there a motion to circulate? Moved by Steve, seconded by Laura. All in favor of circulating and coming back next month?
Great.
And that carries unanimously.
And if you're interested, you're all welcome to have a walking tour with me.
I would encourage you to do it. It's fun, especially when you can go out and have a drink afterwards.
Donna, another time, for sure.
If I remember correctly, it was quite a storm that was brewing when you guys were going to go.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So we did. I think I actually was late because I refused to walk in the rain, and I showed up 15 minutes
It
late.
was
but you were
raining
kind enough to-
sideways into the Q garage as I was putting my backpack in the car.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
Yeah.
But it was a good tour. It was cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great.
And great work, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really
Thank
good
you.
work.
All right.
You are clearly so knowledgeable.
Yeah. No, it's
Thanks.
really
Thank you.
Okay. Minutes, I guess we have minutes from December. We're running a little behind in the minutes. Is there a motion on the minutes? Moved by Laura, seconded by Steve. All in favor of approving the minutes? That carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Laura, seconded by Steve.
Have it scheduled.
Yeah, look at that. Donna's really disappointed we didn't put good cause legislation on the agenda. The right to renew legislation.
Oh, the right to renew.
That would have drawn a lot of public comment. Have they reached out to everybody? I only heard from Donna. Yeah.
No, they reached out to me. I heard from them, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't respond because I met with Genevieve and.
So I supported,
Oh, jeez,
Yeah.
these things.
so I supported the state right to renew, but they do not have, like, what I think are the pivotal elements of the state right to renew in what they've proposed.
They stripped a bunch of things out.
Just completely.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Albany just passed, did you hear, the Albany Common Council just passed it, and it's that they have something that looks very similar to this.